It's not about being bad with money. It's about being trapped by it. Let me introduce you to Mike. Mike makes $45,000 a year. After taxes, insurance, which is 401k per year, he brings home about $2,900 a month. Rent, $1,200. Car payment and insurance, $450. Phone, utilities, groceries, and gas, another $800. That leaves maybe $450 of breathing room. And that $450 has to cover everything else. Haircuts, clothes, going out, and every single surprise the universe decides to throw at him. So when Mike's check engine light comes on, a $600 repair, it's not about the car. It's a full-blown crisis. It means choosing which bill gets paid late. It means texting friends, "I can't make it this Friday," and pretending you're busy. It means eating frozen food for 2 weeks. This is what psychologists call survival mode, and it has nothing to do with your intelligence or your work ethic. When your brain operates with zero financial margin, every single decision gets filtered through one soul-crushing question. Can I afford this without something else falling apart? That question runs like a loop. At the grocery store, at the gas pump, when your friend suggests an Uber instead of the bus. 50 times a day, your brain is doing survival math instead of thinking about other things. And here's the part that makes it so much worse. Survival mode doesn't just drain your wallet, it drains your judgment. You take the first job offer because you can't afford to wait. You stay in a terrible apartment because the deposit on a better one would wipe you out. You skip the networking event, the certification course, the conference, because every single one costs money you don't have. You're not making bad decisions. You're making the only decisions available to someone with $387 in their account. So why $10,000? Why not $5,000 or $15,000? Because $10,000 is the point where the most common financial disasters stop being disasters. Let's run the list. The average unexpected car repair? Between $500 and $2,500. An urgent care visit? $150 to $600. An ER trip without surgery averages $1,500 to $3,000. Job loss? $10,000 gives you roughly 3 to 4 months of bare-bones expenses to be selective, not desperate. Before $10,000, a $1,200 car repair goes on a 24% interest credit card. It becomes $1,400 by the time you pay it off. The stress of that balance leads to a missed payment somewhere else, a late fee, more debt. One unexpected expense turns into 3 months of financial chaos. After $10,000, that same $1,200 repair is an inconvenience. You pay it. Your savings dips to $8,800, and you build it back over the next few months. Same way, completely different outcome. This is the threshold where your financial life stops being a game of whack-a-mole, constantly reacting to whatever emergency pops up next, and starts being something you can actually plan around. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Because the biggest change at $10,000 isn't financial, it's neurological.
When Mike had $387, his brain was running a background program all day, every day, calculating, worrying, scanning for threats. That program takes up real cognitive space. Researchers call this the bandwidth tax, the mental load of being broke. It's why financially stressed people perform worse on decision-making tests, sleep worse, and report higher anxiety. It's not that they're less capable. Their brain is just busy doing financial survival math, while everyone else's brain is free to focus on everything else. When Mike crosses $10,000, that background program starts shutting down. Not because his problems disappeared, but because his brain finally registers. There's a buffer between me and catastrophe, and the effects show up in places you wouldn't expect. First, the grocery store. This sounds ridiculous, but it's one of the first places people notice the shift. Mike walks in, and for the first time in years, he's thinking about what he actually wants to eat, not what he can afford to eat. He's not doing mental arithmetic in the cereal aisle. He's just shopping. That tiny moment of freedom multiplied across every daily decision. The gas station, the coffee shop, whether to grab lunch or pack one. adds up to an enormous amount of mental energy freed up for other things. Second, the identity shift. This one's subtle but powerful. Before $10,000, Mike thought of himself as someone who's bad with money. Not because anyone told him that, but because every time he checked his balance, the number confirmed it. After $10,000, something flips. He's now the type of person who has $10,000 saved. That sounds simple, but it changes how he approaches every financial decision going forward. He's not trying to save. He's a saver. That identity carries forward. It affects whether he orders the extra drink, whether he finances or pays cash, whether he talks himself into a purchase he doesn't need. The money built the habit, and now the habit protects the money. Third, threat detection flips to opportunity detection. When Mike was in survival mode, every unexpected event was a potential crisis. Car problem? Crisis. Rent increase? Crisis. A friend starting a business and looking for a small investor? It doesn't even register as relevant because you can't think about opportunity when you're busy dodging bullets. But with $10,000 in the bank, Mike's brain starts running a completely different scan. He hears about a $2,000 certification course that could bump his salary by $8,000 a year. Before, that was impossible. Now, it's an investment with a 4-month payback period. A better apartment opens up closer to work that would cut his commute by 40 minutes each way, but the deposit is $2,400. Before, he scrolls past it. Now, he runs the numbers. The opportunities were always there. Mike just couldn't see them through the fog of survival mode. Now, let's talk about what $10,000 does to Mike's career, because this might be the most underrated part of the entire equation. When Mike had nothing saved, he was trapped in whatever job he had. His boss could pile on unreasonable hours, his coworkers could be toxic, the work could be mind-numbing, and he'd take it because quitting meant rent wouldn't get paid next month. That kind of desperation leaks into everything. You don't ask for raises because you're terrified of rocking the boat. You don't push back on bad assignments because you need the job more than they need you. You don't take the afternoon off for a job interview because the risk of getting caught feels like a death sentence. $10,000 changes the entire power dynamic. Suddenly, Mike has what I call walking away money. He could quit tomorrow and cover his expenses for 3 to 4 months while he finds something better. He probably won't quit. He doesn't need to. But knowing he could changes everything about how he shows up at work. He asks for the raise. Worst case, they say no, and he's fine either way. He pushes back when his manager dumps a weekend project on him at 4 p.m. on Friday. He takes the interview across town because he's not desperate, he's exploring. And here's the part that sounds almost too convenient to be true. When you stop operating from desperation, people treat you differently. You carry yourself with more confidence. You speak up in meetings. You take on projects because they're interesting, not because you're afraid of saying no. That shift doesn't go unnoticed. Better assignments follow. Recognition follows. Often, more money follows. The irony? Mike probably never spends the walking away money. It just sits there. But it works like a force field. Its power comes from existing, not from being used. All right, let's get into the numbers. Because the math at this stage is where you start to see why $10,000 is a turning point and not just a nice milestone. Let's say Mike starts saving $500 a month and investing it in a broad market index fund earning an average of 8% per year. His first $10,000 takes about 19 months. 19 months of discipline, sacrifice, and saying no to things he wanted. That part is brutal, and there's no shortcut around it. But his second $10,000 doesn't take another 19 months. It takes closer to 16 months. Same paycheck, same contribution, same effort. But he shaved 3 months off the timeline. Why? Because the first $10,000 is now working alongside him. It's generating its own returns, compounding quietly in the background, adding to the pile without Mike having to do a thing. By the time he's going for his third $10,000, the timeline shrinks again. And the further he goes, the faster it gets. At $100,000, his investments are generating roughly $8,000 a year on their own. That's like having a coworker who shows up every day and deposits money into his account. No paycheck required. This is the curve that nobody shows you when you're starting from zero. The beginning is painfully slow. It feels like nothing is happening. But the growth is exponential, not linear. And $10,000 is where the curve starts to bend. Here's another way to think about it. That car payment Mike's making, $450 a month on a depreciating asset. If he were driving a reliable used car and putting that $450 into investments instead, he'd hit $10,000 in savings in roughly 20 months. In 10 years, that same $450 a month grows to over $80,000. The car he's driving right now is worth maybe $6,000 by then. That's not a lecture about never buying a car. It's just the math of where the money goes when you send it in two different directions. Once Mike crosses the $10,000 line, doors start opening that he didn't even know were there. His friend mentions he's starting a small landscaping business and looking for someone to put in $3,000 for a share of the profits. 6 months ago, Mike would have said, "Cool, good luck," and moved on. Now he can actually think about it. He's not going to throw his entire emergency fund at it, but he can evaluate it like an investment instead of dismissing it as something that's not for people like me. A recruiter reaches out about a position that pays $12,000 more per year, but requires relocating to a new city. Moving costs, deposits, first and last month's rent. That's easily $4,000 to $5,000 up front. Without savings, this opportunity doesn't even get a phone call back. With $10,000 in the bank, Ryan can actually consider whether the long-term math makes sense. His company offers tuition reimbursement for a certification that would qualify him for a senior role, but he has to pay the $1,800 up front and get reimbursed after passing. Before $10,000, he couldn't front the money. Now it's a no-brainer. He's essentially buying an $8,000 raise for $1,800, and he's getting the $1,800 back anyway. This is what people mean when they say money goes to money. It's not some cosmic conspiracy where the universe rewards people who already have cash. It's simpler than that. Having money gives you options. Options give you access to opportunities, and opportunities are how wealth actually gets built. The person with zero savings and the person with $10,000 saved can be looking at the exact same opportunity, but only one of them can actually take it. Now here's where most people blow it. And I mean most. Mike hits $10,000. He feels the shift, the relief, the confidence. For the first time in his adult life, his bank account isn't a source of anxiety. And his brain immediately does what brains always do when they feel safe. It tries to celebrate. I've earned this. I deserve a reward. I've been so disciplined. One nice thing won't hurt. The one nice thing is usually a new car, a vacation, a wardrobe upgrade, or a lifestyle bump that locks in higher monthly spending. And just like that, the $10,000 is gone. Not all at once. That would be too obvious. It erodes. $1,200 here, $800 there, a new subscription, a slightly more expensive apartment. Within 6 months, Mike's back to checking his bank app with one eye open. The $10,000 was never a reward. It was a launch pad. It's the foundation that everything else gets built on. Spend it, and you're not just losing $10,000. You're losing the compound growth it would have generated, the career confidence it gave you, the opportunities it would have unlocked, and the identity shift that took 19 months to build. You're resetting to zero and starting the hardest part all over again. 6 months later, Mike's check engine light comes on again. Same car, same light, same sinking feeling in his stomach. For about 2 seconds. Then he remembers. He's not the same Mike. He pulls up his bank app. The number looking back at him has 5 digits. He calls the mechanic, schedules an appointment for Saturday morning, and goes back to whatever he was doing. He's not rich. He hasn't made it. He still checks prices at the grocery store and thinks twice before eating out. But the panic is gone. The survival math is gone. The background noise of financial stress that used to run every waking minute of his life, gone. And here's the part nobody tells you. The $10,000 was important, but it wasn't the most valuable thing Mike built over those 19 months. The most valuable thing was the version of himself that could get there. The discipline, the habits, the identity of someone who controls their money instead of being controlled by it. That's the thing that compounds from here. Not just the money. The person. So if you're currently staring at a bank balance that looks a lot like Mike's $387, that's fine. That's where the story starts. It's not where it has to end. The goal isn't just to get to $10,000. The goal is to become the type of person who gets to $10,000 and then doesn't blow it. The goal is to rewire your brain out of survival mode and into strategy mode. To trade that constant, low-grade panic for actual optionality. Your first $10,000 isn't about the number. It's about the freedom that number buys you. Freedom from panic. Freedom to see opportunities. Freedom to walk away from a bad situation. Freedom to think about more than just getting through next month. That freedom is worth every single sacrifice it takes to get there. So start today, not with some complicated budget. Just start. Find $100, then $200. Put it in a separate account you don't touch. Let that number be your new scoreboard. Watch what happens to your decisions. Watch what happens to your confidence. Watch what happens to the opportunities that start to appear. Because everything changes after your first $10,000. Not because you're rich, but because you're finally free.